Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Bob Power, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you've joined us for our next live presentation from Labrador Uranium. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in scheduling a meeting with Labrador Uranium, please click on the Meetings tab found on the left navigation bar. You'll be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Stephen Keith, Chief Executive Officer of Labrador Uranium, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol LURAF and on the CSE under the symbol LUR. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate the introduction. So look, everyone, thank you for your time. I know we've been sitting in front of presentations all day, so I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. Labrador Uranium, we're a relatively new company. We were listed on the CSE in March of this year, so publicly we're not even a year old. And we're a relatively early stage explorer, but we do control an entire district, and that's going to be the nature of this story. We are a district scale, target-rich exploration company in Labrador, and this belt that we're on, the Central Mineral Belt in Labrador, is a belt that has been explored for over 50 years. And in the last uranium cycle, there was over a half dozen companies that were working where we are now. And in that intervening time from the last cycle to today, ourselves and our partners have been able to consolidate this incredible land package of over 150,000 hectares. That's highly prospective, but it does come with historical uranium resources. So we've got a really great starter kit here in the company. And so now let me take you through it. Obviously, we will be making some forward-looking statements. So please be aware of that. And we do seek safe harbor. So in a junior exploration company, I think there's certain things I always like to start with. First and foremost, it was one of the drivers and one of the things that are important to us here. So first and foremost, we are established company builders. This company was started by a board of directors that has built companies before and has delivered value for their investors. So from our executive chairman, Phil Williams, who's also the CEO of Consolidated Uranium, which was originally where we spun out of with our initial asset at Morin Lake. We have Richard Patricio on our board, who is the CEO of Mega Uranium. So again, two individuals who've been long uranium for a really long time. Even when I was a banker in 2010, Phil was the research analyst covering uranium back then. We also have Justin Reed, who's the CEO of Troilus Gold. I've known Justin for a long time. He and I were actually building, I guess you'd say, competing fertilizer companies in Brazil way back when. And I was able to sell mine to a private equity company in Brazil in 2013. And then we also think that independence is important. So we bring an independent director named Brigitte Bernesh here that is a CA, has worked in the mining sector for quite a long time. So the group of people that we have in the board are people that have built companies, have been in finance and resources for 20 to 30 years. And we have a very clear view on strategy and being an investor focused. We are investor focused, and we have one goal, and that is to make investors money. And for that, we try to structure this company, and structure what we're doing in a way where it gives investors the most ability to gain value. We do believe also that Labrador is going to be the next great Canadian uranium region. Look, we're not going to be the Athabasca, and nowhere else in the world will ever be the Athabasca at those sorts of grades. But the advantages we have here is the targets that we have are all at or near surface. We already know that this belt contains uranium. Along the 125 kilometer belt that we control, at the far east end of this is an asset owned by Paladin, and that is a plus or minus 100 million pound uranium resource. That's the Michelin deposit. On the far west side of this belt is our starter project, which is we call Morin Lake. It's the Morin Lake asset. It's got about a 20 million pound historical uranium resource, which we hope to grow. And on this land package, there's well over 100 targets that we can be looked at of known uranium and other minerals. There's actually quite a lot of copper and other commodities in this belt. Labrador is a terrific place to work. We'll talk about some of that in a bit, but there is a lot of uranium in the system, and it is incredibly underexplored. Again, we've been able to put together this entire district that's had multiple companies look at it over decades, but in that time, very little great work has been done. Very little drilling, very little detailed geophysics and that sort of thing. So there's quite a bit to do here, with lots of smoke in the system. And sometimes it's nice to have good timing. Look, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on why uranium. I think most of you have heard that all day long. But look, oftentimes when one is looking at a play in the midst of a hot market, like looking at uranium in a uranium cycle, the logic is often to go for something more advanced and that's going to get you to production, because that's going to take advantage of your pricing and that supply demand dynamic now when it exists. That being said, I do believe, and I'm not the only one out there, that this is the beginning of a very, very long cycle. If we look at the global supply and demand dynamics of uranium and the need to build clean baseload energy, this is really the only game in town. And we're looking at the potential to double demand in the relatively near future, only with the projects that are on the books and planned in the nuclear world. So we think the timing is great to be here and to be looking at what we have. And it's nice to start with the kit that we have. So company snapshot, we're sitting on about 58.1 million shares. Recently, we announced the acquisition of another asset within this belt that's going to add 5 million pounds of uranium to our historical resources. So there will be an additional 5 million shares on top of that share count. We're sitting at $11 million plus a little over $11 million in cash as of our last financial statements at the end of August. And we've got a really, really solid group of investors sitting in here. So Altius Minerals, who brought us the majority of this land package, owns about 14% of the company. Mega Uranium, we brought an asset in from them, and they've also been an investor in the company, owns about 7-8% of the company. We were spun out of Consolidated Uranium, so those shareholders historically owned about 27% of the company. Those shares have been spun out, so they're not owned by Consolidating anymore. It's in their individual shareholders' hands. And of the 48% remaining there, we raised about $20 million in October of last year and in March of this year, so on 2 financings. And the great majority of that was taken up by long funds, a lot of whom were strategic uranium funds. So we've got a really strong investor base. We've got a tight capital structure with a lot of cash on hand for what we need to do. And we have good support. And, starting with the guys at Red Cloud. So Dave Talbot has us a buy rating with a $1.36 target, $1.35 target. So look, it's a great starter kit. And now we've got to do something with it. I won't spend a ton of time on this page, only in that on the leadership team page, only in that we've talked about the board a bit and myself. But what I do want to draw people's attention to is the technical team, because that is going to be very important for what we do. We are an exploration company. So as much as I can talk about a board that is strategic and is making sure we manage the money right and we have the appropriate strategy and way forward, we have to make discoveries. And fundamentally, that has to be done through the drill bit, and we've got a great team here, so led by Nancy Normore. Nancy has been working in Labrador for a while. She was working up at Voisey's Bay, but the majority of her work has been in the basin and has been in uranium. So she's very deep into this space and has done a great job in her first year here at the company. The other side of the equation, though, is we do have an unbelievably large land package. Again, it's over 150,000 hectares, over 125 kilometers. This is an area that has seen exploration for almost 50 years. So there's quite a bit of data, but it's been done by dozens of different companies, different levels of professionality or quality or whatever. So what do we do with that? We don't want to redo all that work. That's tens of millions of dollars of work. So what we have decided to do, and something that we're moving forward on, is we're building our own sort of modern data-focused approach. We're building our own machine learning, artificial intelligence, to help us find targets. So I'll get into that in a second, what that means, but we brought on board 2 key people to do that. One is Paul Pearson, PhD structural geologist. He's been in the exploration field for over 30 years. Drew Heisman, who's our head of geodata, has been doing this for over 15 years. And what's so exciting is they both have that hands-on field exploration and discovery experience. But recently they have been moving their area of expertise into machine learning. So Paul had a team that entered the Gawler Prize, the Gawler Challenge a few years ago. It was looking at something very similar in Australia, the Gawler Craton area with tons, huge, massive area, lots of historical data, but it was going to take too much money and too much time to like really make discoveries due to how much was going on there. So what did they do? They developed their own AI to look at all this historical data and the geology to come up with real exploration targets. And they were able to win the Gawler Prize doing that. Drew Heisman and his team at when he was finishing his master's degree did something similar. They were using AI for exploration. And at this year's PDAC, he and his team won an Emerging Explorers Award for what they did. So we have that in-house ability. We can take decades of information to help us target, while at the same time we have the expertise to do on-the-ground exploration to make those discoveries. I talked about this earlier already. You know, Labrador is a great place to be. The Fraser Institute considers it to be one of the top 10 investment jurisdictions for mining in the world. We see beautiful mines there like Voisey's Bay, just north of us. We've got those huge iron ore mines west of us there. This is a beautifully endowed region geologically that has seen very, very little quality exploration. So there's incredible opportunity here. And again, we think it's a great opportunity. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do and have spent time in the renewable energy space. I am a fan. I've built and developed run-of-river hydro and wind projects. I see what's going on in solar, and those are a great piece of our energy future. However, the great majority of that only generates power about 33% of the time. For base load carbon neutral energy, carbon free energy, those aren't going to work. They don't generate the way you need, and you need availability all the time. And the only choice today is uranium for zero carbon baseload. And look, as we increase demand for what's going to come out of our grids with looking at all these batteries and electric vehicles, again, that's a great way for the world to go. We got to power that stuff. And again, that comes from baseload, and that's uranium. So we're only at the very, very beginning of what should be a very long cycle in uranium. The Central Mineral Belt in Labrador is a beautifully endowed region geologically. It is where 4 different geological provinces have come together at 4 different times. So there's been 4 different orogenic or mountain building phases. That's given us 2 gifts. 1, fluids. Beautiful fluids from deep in the earth. You're looking, that's where you're getting your gold, your copper that's throughout this system. Oh, somehow my lights just went off. There we go. And the other side of it is structure. All that faulting and folding has created these structures, which are our traps, which is fundamental to uranium and to creating uranium deposits. So people went in thinking that this was a possibility, and it has been proven out. And again, it's been proven out. Why? Because we do have this 100 million pound Michelin deposit anchoring the east side of this belt that's owned by Paladin, plus several smaller deposits found within this region. So a lot of potential here. A lot has been discovered. Now we've got to do the work. So here is a summary of our main land package, the Central Mineral Belt. Everything in blue there is ours. You can see the Michelin deposit on the eastern side there, our Morin Lake deposit on the western side. What's important with this map is, firstly, you can see how the land is broken up. So we were able to consolidate this when multiple players used to have it before. We now have it all in one. Every one of those black dots on that map are known uranium occurrences. So we're not exploring blind here. There's a lot of uranium in the system. And whereas in the last uranium cycle, people could only look at what they had and what was on their land, we've improved with the ability to take on this whole belt that now we can stick our heads up a little, pull our heads up a little, look around and say, are there larger things to be looking at, not just these discrete pods that are on our property? One of the things that happened with the Michelin deposit is, instead of it being one giant 100 million pound deposit, it's a few smaller deposits, all near surface, which is what's going to help economically in this area. And so having a larger land package, if you're looking for something like that, is much to our benefit. So look, we've had this massive land package. Within that land package, there's well over 100 targets. Even within that, we have our Morin Lake asset, which starts with a historical uranium resource. So there's a historical uranium vanadium resource at Morin Lake. We're in the midst of completing the acquisition of a project called Anna Lake, which is just north of Michelin there. That again comes with historical uranium resource of about 5 million pounds. Also comes with other components like other commodities like rhenium and molybdenum. So We do have a starter kit with pounds in the ground that are real, but incredible number of targets that we can go after. And again, this talks a little bit more about the geology, but every one of the white rectangles on this slide point to a known uranium occurrence, the great majority of which sits on our land. So we have to start somewhere. So obviously this summer we're focused on the details around Morin Lake and where we already have the historical resource, but there's quite a bit of regional work that can be done and has been done. And that's what we're doing now. So the previous owners, the guys that put this land package together, were Altius Minerals. They pulled together all that historical geophysics, geochemistry, soil data, and started doing the work to come up with targets. And their first pass generated 146 targets. That's way too many for a singular company to own and way too much land. But the nice thing that we know is there's lots of stuff here. And we've now got to drill that down. And that's what the machine learning is for. But on this map, if you look at those green dots, every one of those green dots, once again, is known uranium. But this has so much more here. Every one of those red dots on that map is a known copper occurrence. The first 30 years of exploration from the 1970s on for this area was for copper. And lots of copper was found, but very little quality work was done. Very few, if any, copper drill holes were drilled. It wasn't really comprehensive, mostly done at the sort of the prospector level. So there's a lot to chase here. And again, with that structure, and the confluence of 4 different geological provinces coming together and having found uranium, copper, vanadium in here, there's much more to be done. And that's what's so exciting about this land package. So again, part of that process is using this modern data focused approach. And we have the team that can build this AI to make this happen. And we have huge amounts of historical data. So out of that, and hopefully in the relatively near future, is going to be our phase 1 prospecting, which should identify, my hope was 5 or 6. I think it's going to be many more distinct targets. So as opposed to like a specific occurrence, what we're looking for is projects. Where are there potential ore bodies within this massive land package? So we know Morin Lake and sort of the trend northeast and southwest of that has uranium and has these ore bodies in it. We know that Anna Lake does that, and the other asset we have, Mustang Lake, have that. But where else do we have these? And using this historical data, we should be able to produce a pretty comprehensive map of where those critical targets are. So all of a sudden, we will be able to be a company that isn't one asset. We're one land package, but we're going to have multiple assets that we can develop here, which gives shareholders many shots on goal for gaining value and driving value in this company. And that's what we're trying to do. But again, we have that land package. We have these multiple targets that we're developing that hopefully are going to become something significant. But we start with a known resource. So we're not starting at zero. So the Morin Lake project starting about 20 million pounds historical uranium equivalent. About 10 million pounds of that is uranium. The rest comes in vanadium. It's at surface, very clear, easy to distinguish, but it has not been drilled deep, mostly because there's no point in drilling deep. When you're looking at these grades of deposits, you want shallow deposits. That's how the best way you're going to make money here. You want something relatively near surface. It's nice to see that there's other commodities that come with the uranium, because anything else that pays just, it depends on how you want to do your math. That just lowers your operating cost or increases your revenue stream. But we're fans of that, because the name of the game isn't just discovering uranium. It's, can you make money? Can you develop something that is economic? And that is fundamentally what we have to do. And we have a great starter kit here, and it's open along strike. It's open at depth. There's a lot to be done with this Morin Lake asset. This summer, that's what we focused on. So our first exploration campaign, we drilled a little over 2,000 meters. We did find what looks like extensions of the Morin Lake deposit, and with the assays that are coming up by the end of this year, we hope to be able to show that. We don't believe there's going to be one singular giant deposit, but again, like what we're seeing throughout this basin, if we have 2 or 3 of these things that hold together into millions and millions of pounds, then we really have something, especially at surface. And if you look closely at this map, you can see that there's this trend northeast and southwest of known uranium throughout that whole that bubble we have there that is the Morin Lake asset. What's also exciting, though, is both here but also throughout the basin, what we're seeing with a lot of that copper that we're finding is there's quite a bit of potential, actually exceptional potential, for iron ore, copper, gold in the system. The nature of the structures, the nature of the geology really lends itself to that. And through the machine learning and some of the groundwork we did, we actually identified a few targets that we were going to drill this season. We ran out of time due to snow, so we'll get at them next year. But we're starting to identify distinct targets for IOCG. And what's interesting, and again, I can't say that that's what we have. We're early stage exploration, but just to bring to people's mind is I can't remember again if it's the largest or second largest uranium mine in the world is actually an IOCG project. It's Olympic Dam in Australia. So you do have this beastly IOCG with this uranium that's almost a byproduct, but it's so much of it that it's one of the largest mines in the world. So we don't mind finding these things together. And again, our goal is to deliver value to shareholders. We know there's tons of uranium in the system, but there's lots of other stuff here that could really drive the value of this company. On top of that, look, we've got Mustang Lake. That's the project we brought on from Mega Uranium. It's very interesting. They've intersected some very good uranium in these drill holes. It's the same geology as Michelin. So again, is it an extension? What comes up? It's surrounded by the Michelin deposit. So quite a bit of potential here. And this case study is, this is what we're trying to do. So the last time we saw uranium exploration in this basin, which ended in about 2011 last time, the Aurora Energy guys, which was bought out by Paladin, what they did is they just started drilling the Michelin deposit. It started in a very similar way to ours. It was about 30 million pounds historical resource. The Altius Minerals was one of the founding shareholders of it. They helped put the land package together like ours. And every drill campaign that they had, they continued to add pound after pound after pound of uranium as they extended along those trends. It also helps that uranium prices were moving up. So as those two things happened hand in hand, this belt saw an asset grow to a $1.3 billion value. Now, obviously, when uranium came down and came from $140 down to sort of $20, $30, $40, that market cap went down significantly. And then this region was hit by another negative, which was for a small period of time, and it was lifted in 2011, just to be clear, there was a uranium moratorium put on in this area. So you couldn't actually explore or develop for uranium for about a year or two in this basin while the Inuit were working on self-government. So even when uranium prices fell out of bed and there was a moratorium on uranium exploration and development, Paladin went in at that time and bought this Michelin deposit for $261 million. So to me, that tells me that there is real value in the ground. And that asset today, depends on your research analyst, and take this with the grain of salt that it's meant to be taken with. But guys like Canaccord are putting about greater than $450 million value on the Michelin deposit when they do their valuations of Paladin. So there's real value in this belt. We know the commodities, the minerals are there, and the structures are there. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to do what we know to be there, to do proper geology, to grow this out, to show that we've got one, if not more, of these types of deposits. On top of that land package, there is a project. I'm just going to go over it very quickly. It's called Nataqwanan, much further north. So you see this red belt around Michelin's further south of the map. Nataqwanan is much further north. It's a much smaller target area. We brought that in when we did the Altius deal. Why? Because firstly, it's a new area. We like having targets and things that look like they can be exciting. But this is an area where the uraninite veins can be traced and mapped right to surface. The Altius guys found over 20 uranium occurrences at surface. They did some trenches and some sampling. The grades looked pretty good. Always take those grades with a grain of salt, though, right? Like what you find at surface and grab samples is if you find it, it's great to find 2.5% grab sample, 3.5% grab sample, but that doesn't mean that that's what's underground, right? What it does tell you, though, is that there's uranium in the system. You know it's there, and that's about all we know. No geophysics has been done. No drilling has been done. So it's a really neat, distinct, clear area to that we can attack and develop. At present, it's sort of our fourth or fifth project, so we might not do a ton on it right now, but it's an exciting little package to add, land package to add to what we have, and that's what we are. So look, we're an exploration company. First pass generated over 146 targets. We're narrowing that down into concrete projects as opposed to targets. We did our work this year, and we're developing the machine learning. We should be getting assays back from those first 2 kilometers of exploration drilling this year. And again, we've got lots of cash. We're in very good shape with an incredible land package and lots of targets in a beautiful area. And that's us in a nutshell. It's a district scale opportunity, well-known commodity belt that's been way underexplored. We start with a historic resource base with tons of reasons that should grow. We've got an incredible shareholder base, and it's led by a proven team. So look, that's the goal here. We think we're going to have a lot of success. There's going to be a lot of news generated here, and that's Labrador Uranium. So with that, I know I'm running out of time, but I see some questions coming up here, so I'll pause for an eighth of a second to read them, and then I'll read them out and answer them for you. Okay, so the first question I see here is, how did I come to acquire the CMB land package? So maybe I should have started here. So Labrador Uranium was originally spun out of Consolidated Uranium. So Consolidated Uranium, as their name says, was consolidating dozens of uranium assets throughout the world. But they started to move into projects that were more readily developable, more advanced. And this project wasn't going to be able, they weren't going to be able to spend the money on it that this project required. So we made the decision to let's pull the Morin Lake project out of Labrador Uranium. We were also already in discussions with Altius Minerals, who'd put together this massive land package, and we'd worked with them before. We have a great relationship. So the decision was, you pull out Labrador Uranium. We gave Consolidated Uranium 16 million shares for that. We bought that entire 140 some odd thousand hectare land package from Altius Minerals for 8 million shares. And then for 3 million shares, we bought the Mustang Lake deposit. And all of that is what brought this land package together. We've done some other deals like recently, and we'll just be closing Anna Lake in the next week or so. That adds another 5 million shares to the share count. But all those assets were bought for shares at a time where we were basically trying to consolidate this entire package with strategic people. There's a question here as well as about the price. The price at the time, I think we didn't really set a price, to tell you the truth. We did it for shares and percentage ownership with the view that we were going to grow this. The first financing we did, though, was at 40 cents. So, if you're buying the land package for 8 million shares, then $3.2 million theoretically. But the real value to guys like Altius's main view of value or where they drive their value is royalties. So we did give them 8 million shares, but they do have a 2% royalty on anything that is mined out of this region. So there was that. I hope that answers that question. And then I think the last question, because I'm running out of time, but what were the key takeaways from the 2022 drill campaign? So don't have all the answers yet because we don't have the assays. But what the key takeaways for us were a few is, one, we think we have some potential extensions to Morin Lake. Realizing that we went public in March, we sort of sprinted to try to get our exploration plan and going. So we had the money, but we had to build a field camp. We had to get a field team going, and we had to do this work. So we got there, which was great, but it's not like we could explore everything we could and stick drill holes everywhere we could. The most advanced asset we had was Morin Lake. So it made sense to test around there. With the fundamental question is, can we grow that asset? At 20 million pound uranium equivalent, that's not big enough yet to be a mine in this area. You need something larger. It is at surface, which is great. Comes with vanadium, which is great, but it needs to be better. And so the fundamental question we have is testing around it, potential extensions to see if it grows. I can't fundamentally say we have done that, but we think we have found extensions. Our last press release does allude to that. We found uranium down hole. And so that is the biggest learning from the actual exploration. The two other pieces were, prior to making the acquisition for Anna Lake, we went up north and we started exploring, and that became one of our top exploration targets for next year before we bought it. So now that we've bought it, like the actual resource, we already know the stuff around it. So there's quite a bit to be done around there. And then the final piece for our exploration system was machine learning. And the machine learning, which is although going to take time because using all that historical data takes time, we're starting to generate real targets. And that's going to lead us to 2023. Out of 2023, we hope to continue to work around Morin Lake. We'll definitely be attacking Anna Lake more. And most importantly, looking at what the machine learning has given us to try to develop more resources, hoping to be a company that isn't one or two assets, but 5, 6, or 7 that can really do something for investors and gives us a lot of optionality in the future. And with that, everybody, I think I've run out of time. So thank you. If I've missed any questions, please feel free to reach out. And thank you for everyone for putting this together.